We can make a rhythm out of it. Good evening, everybody. It's 5:00 p.m. Welcome to the meeting of the Woodfin Town Council. It is Tuesday, February 20, 2024. First item we need to do is to approve the agenda. I hope council's had a chance to review it. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve it with one addition. I think that either in new business tonight or at our March meeting, I think we need to discuss whether we need to give Stephanie direction on further communications to the west of the river group. I think that that needs to come clearly from council, given the stakes involved, and not left to staff to figure out on their own. So I'm happy with discussing that either tonight or pushing it to March. I'm fine either way.
If I may, several of us met with Shannon at length this afternoon, so could we push that off? Would you consider that?
And hold off on doing any sort of communication until March, after we've discussed in March?
No, but no communication would happen without council seeing it.
Well, I think we need to have the conversation of whether there needs to be any further communication before we start assigning tasks for staff to take
Okay,
on.
then perhaps we need to add that to new business. Okay, so that will become item 3 of new business tonight. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion, opposition? Anybody want to? It will become clear in the discussion. All in favor of the motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great, thank you. Next is the consent agenda. I'd ask the town manager to give us a brief overview of what we're being asked to approve.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think the first 3 items are relatively routine items, so I'll kind of gloss over those. Approval of special meeting minutes from February 1st and 7th, and approval of the tax collection report ending December 31st. Item number 4, approval of ordinance 2024-01 concerning Sunday alcohol sales. In 2017, the North Carolina General Assembly passed or amended the rules regarding selling alcohol on Sundays, and they allow municipalities to opt into an earlier hour to sell alcohol. So that would, instead of at 12 noon, you could bump it back to 10 a.m. And that is primarily so that restaurants can serve certain kind of typical brunch cocktails. I think that's where the main push for that change came from. There was some misunderstanding and some misreporting back in 2017 that the town of Woodfin passed that. We did not pass it. So the licensed establishments are asking us now to consider it, so I've added that to your consent agenda. Item number 5 is a small budget amendment for the completion of the town salt shed. The construction drawings did not include the finish for the roof and the walls, and that was an oversight on our part. The contractor didn't point that out to us, so we have to add that now. It is still within our budget, and it still remains the lowest quote, even with that added back in. Item number 6, if people, or we have a number of what we call paper right-of-ways in the town. These are when properties are platted or subdivisions are platted, it's a right-of-way that's dedicated, but often because of topography or other reasons, these are never opened, meaning nobody's ever paved them or tried to use the right-of-way to access property. And so there is a process, statutory process, to close these rights-of-way, and we have one such request for it's a little short piece of right-of-way that runs between 35 and 41 Fox Road and 8 New Hope Road. It's the same property owner for 35 and 41, and then the second property owner for New Hope, and they both signed the petition. The process is first to approve a resolution setting the public hearing. So the public hearing will come next month. And we'll have more detail about the closure. But this is just to set that public hearing. And then lastly is the approval of Resolution 2024-02, which is the disposal of surplus property. This is also fairly common for the town to dispose of surplus property. So I think that's relatively self-explanatory. But I'd be happy to answer any questions.
There was a lot of documentation, questions, concerns.
Anybody want to buy a salt shed?
Or an old truck.
Yeah.
Seeing that there's no discussion or concern from council members, we'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move that we accept the consent agenda as written.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great. Next is everybody's favorite part, public comment. This is the time in our meeting every month where we allow anyone, locally or not, to come and address us for a few minutes. We asked people to sign the list, but no one signed up. But we'll still leave the invitation open. We've got a number of people here tonight. Most of you are on the agenda somewhere, but if anybody would like to address us, please indicate. It's good to see you. Thanks, sir. You're back there on Rogues Road. Seeing that there are no members of the public that wish to comment, I'll close the public comment at 5:06 p.m. We have a number of presentations and reports in section E. Number one, the Gasaway family is not present, so we will postpone that. Item number two, we're very fortunate to have Jennifer Bennett from Duke Energy here at mine and Shannon's invitation. So please come to the podium. You are being live streamed. That's why you have to come to the podium.
So this is not scrolling very well, so I can just use can I just do the arrow and will it? Slow speed.
Oh, there
through
it will go. Okay, very
Did it
good.
go?
Yep.
Oh, what happened there?
Not so fast.
I'll try not to touch anything and no promises.
Might blow up.
That's right.
Welcome. We're glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Jennifer Bennett. I'm the Government Community Relations Manager for Duke Energy in this territory. So I have Buncombe, Haywood, Madison, Mitchell, Yancey, and Avery counties. And I joined this territory in June, so I'm pretty new to the territory. I'm not new to Duke Energy. I came out of a group that did hydro licensing, so I'm familiar with the territory and was in Jackson County for quite a long time before I went to Charlotte. So many of you probably worked with Jason Walls, who was the previous Government Community Relations Manager, so if that puts context to what I do, that might be helpful. But I'm here for you, so I'm your point of contact into the company. I hope that you will utilize me if you have any questions and reach out, and that I can be of service to you. With that, of course, also through the mayor or through the town staff, whatever you need. So we talked earlier, and there's a lot going on with Duke Energy in the town of Woodfin. In fact, we were just talking about it, and I'm sorry, I'm remiss, I should have introduced earlier. Adam Henderson is the director of our engineering group. So we're going to talk about some of the infrastructure work that's going on in Woodfin, and Adam is really the expert in that, so he's going to come up and talk to you when we get to that point in the presentation.
Great.
Yeah. So, as I was saying, there's a lot of work going on here. We have new projects that are going on. We have renewable projects that are going on, and we have some improvements and upgrades to existing infrastructure that's happening. So the point this evening is just to really give you an overview of that work that's going on here. So as you see our crews, you see work occurring, you have an idea of what's taking place. If you have specific questions or want to talk more about projects, happy to do so. Okay? Well, we'll jump right in. I am sure, well, look, it did work, the arrow. I'm sure you've heard that we are experiencing really unfathomable and unprecedented growth in the demand for energy all over our service territory. And so we're growing rates at unfathomable years ago with population increases and really a lot of economic development wins in North Carolina and the Carolinas in general. So we're working to upgrade our electrical grid, and we're adding new power generation to the territory. Those new economic development wins include a lot of manufacturing, a lot of technology projects across the Carolinas, and those are really some of the primary drivers for that increased growth that we're seeing. Our peak load growth by 2030 is it's 8 times the growth that we have projected just 2 years ago. So we're really working to pivot and to account for that and to meet that need. We're doing that by adding generation, but we're also going in and doing a lot of work on our poles and wires on our existing infrastructure and really working to meet that need. And I think that this is a really good way to put it into context. And it says Duke Energy's load growth is projected to surge by 58 gigawatt hours. I think the real tangible part of that is that that's 5 states combined. So it's Delaware, Hawaii, Maine, New Hampshire, and Wyoming is what we're expecting to see the growth by. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Western Carolina Modernization Project, at least by name. So if you recall, we have a power generation station in South Asheville, and that station was converted. So the coal station was closed. We brought a new station online. But along with that, and to get there, the Energy Innovation Task Force was formed. That includes the city of Asheville, Buncombe County, and Duke Energy, and really looked at ways to implement new, clean, renewable energy to reduce consumption and demand through a number of different programs. And it resulted in a smaller natural gas plant and really a community commitment to energy efficiency, which helps to reduce the demand, especially the peak demand. I know this might be elementary to some of you, but I always think it's good to talk about how electricity actually gets to you. We make electricity, and it shows up in the house or in the business when you turn the light switch on. We're going to be talking about a lot of poles, a lot of wires, and I think it's good to review how it actually gets out into the community, into businesses and homes. So in number 1, there's some type of generation, whatever the generation looks like in the area. We have a number of different types of generation in this region. It goes into our transmission lines, and I like to think of those as the electrical highways. High capacity, they carry a lot of energy, traffic, and then it steps down into a substation. And that substation helps to regulate it to get it out onto distribution lines so that it can be carried out into the community. And it might be carried to businesses, directly to businesses if they're high consumers, or if you think of large-scale residential developments, or then it continues through the system and it ends up in our homes and our businesses. So looking ahead, everything we've talked about so far is about the growth and kind of looking ahead to meet that growth and that demand. There are a number of projects that are happening in Woodfin, and I included one on this list that's not in Woodfin, but I think it's key to the area. So that's the Asheville Energy Complex, and that's at the station site again in South Asheville down in the Arden area. And we'll generate and we will store, that says restore, store renewable energy, and that will help provide reliability and grid stability. So that project is solar and battery storage together on one site. We have the Riverside Energy Storage Project, and that will store energy and provide reliability and grid stability. We have the Craggy Battery Energy Storage, or Energy Storage Project, and that will similarly provide reliability and grid stability. There's also the Woodfin Solar Project. That project, you're probably familiar with it, is located in Woodfin, as are the last two. And that will, of course, create renewable energy. We also have a transmission line project that's you're going to see it in the Woodfin area. So that is a 9-mile project. We're going to talk about it a little more in depth in a minute. The last, just under a mile of that is in Woodfin. And that's an upgrade. So it's in an existing path, but it's an upgrade, and it's going to help with reliability as well. And then what Adam's going to talk to is we're upgrading a lot of poles and wires, to be simple, in the Woodfin area. So you're going to see a lot of work coming up.
Jennifer, can I, quick question?
Of course.
I know it's not in Woodfin, but can you also mention of the Hot Springs experimental thing?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to do so.
Okay.
Yep, I'll include it in the, we'll talk about these two batteries, and then we'll talk about Woodfin. That seems like a good place for it to go. Or, I'm sorry, Hot Springs.
Right.
Absolutely. Oh. Okay. So we have the Riverside Battery Storage Project. The Riverside project is located on Riverside Drive. It's at the existing Elk Mountain substation, if you're familiar with that. It's right next to the MSD project, or facility. And it is a storage system that's going to complement our growth and our grid. It is 4.6 megawatts, and it's going to go, obviously not in where the substation is, but on that parcel of property there. We're expected to see work begin in 2024. And that will take us to the Craggy Battery Energy Storage Project. This is a 31 megawatt project. It's located out on Olivet Road, and there's also an existing substation there, the Craggy Station, if you're familiar with it. This project, obviously, 31 acres, it's a little bit bigger. It'll be on approximately 2 acres. Both of these are lithium-ion technology batteries. And in addition to supporting day-to-day operations, this project will support the new transmission line that we're going to talk about in a minute. So, batteries support the grid in a really important way. They're able to take electricity off the grid or from the grid when it's not needed at high demand times. It's able to store it, and then it's able to disperse it back into the grid when that demand peaks and it's needed. So it helps us to, that's what helps with that reliability and stabilization of the grid. When we talk about construction of these projects, and I think Riverside and Craggy will be similar, you can expect to see normal construction impacts. So there's going to be some increased traffic. There's going to be construction activities on site. But ultimately, you'll end up with a finished product, and I have an example for you. That is fenced in, so access is restricted, is monitored by Duke Energy 24/7, and includes safety training and collaboration with people like emergency response, so that if there is an emergency on that site, they're familiar with the site, they know how to respond, they know the safety protocols. So before we talk to Hot Springs, because I don't want to lose track of the projects that were talked about, I thought it was important to include an example of an existing battery. Anybody know where this is? It's local. This is the Rock Hill site in the Shiloh community. So this went operational in 2020. It also helps with grid stabilization. This is 9 megawatts, if it helps put context to the other projects. And this is a picture of it complete. So these projects kind of change and evolve, right? What you see on the sites that we're working on in Woodfin are ultimately going to look a little bit different. But I think this adds context. If you have a hard time picturing what a site like this might look like, this is one that's finished. And again, it's 9 megawatts in South Asheville or Mid Asheville. Yes, sir.
Jennifer, what's the battery technology you're using at these?
That's a great question. So it changes and evolves. There's multiple components all over the site. So there are, there's the battery component, there's the inverters, there's all kinds of different. Did you have a question about a specific?
No, I just wondered, there are different battery technologies, and I know it changes, so I just wondered what you guys are focusing on here.
That's a great question. So lithium ion is what the 2 batteries, Craggy and Inca, will be. Deeper than that, we would have to pull in our engineers for the technology of the batteries.
Isn't there also one of these on the Duke Power site down at Lake Julian? Isn't there also an area that's battery storage?
There will be. There will be. So that's part of the Asheville Energy Complex that will have solar and battery implemented in the same project. So they're 2 different infrastructure, but they're in the same project. Yes. But there is a battery, as you noted, at Hot Springs Microgrid. So the microgrid is a little bit different in the fact that there's a radial line that runs to Hot Springs, and that's how we deliver power to the town. To address reliability there, a microgrid was installed. Yes, sir.
You call it a radio line?
A radial,
Radial. No.
Radial, in that there's one line that carries power
Gotcha.
out to the town of Hot
I
Springs.
knew I misunderstood.
Absolutely, and I might have misspoke. That line carries the power to the town, and so if there's issues with that line, essentially the town is left without power. So the Hot Springs microgrid addresses that with the ability to island, which means essentially that it disconnects from the rest of the grid, and then it operates with solar and battery technology to power the town until we get power restored. And so that power looks like, as you would expect, solar and battery. It charges, it stores, and it distributes to the town. It doesn't mean that it's uninterrupted. That depends on the situation, but it's able to carry that town until we can restore power.
Thank you. I wanted microgrid to be at least a little part of the conversation.
Absolutely, thank you. Yep. All right, so the Craggy Inca Reliability Project, this is a transmission line project. And what we're doing is constructing a new 9-mile, 230 kV line, a transmission line between the Craggy substation, which you can see noted at the top of the screen, and the Inca substation, which is notated at the bottom of the screen. And we're working from the south to the north, so we're working in line. Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, Phase 4, and we get into the Woodfin area at Phase 5. And I hope that you can tell that this is an insert blown up essentially to show the amount of the project that's actually located in the Woodfin territory, which is highlighted in red. So we're going into an existing 115 kV line easement right away. And we are adding that 230 line. So instead of doing additional acquisition and running a whole new line and corridor, we're putting it in there. And what that means is that we're having to go a little bit wider on some of our vegetation and subsequently vegetation management. It also means that our poles will be a little bit taller. So we're doing underbuild. And I have an example of what that pole is going to look like. Most impacts are going to be to the people who live on that line. And I'll show you these structures because I think that's important. I think this does a good job of painting the picture of the difference. So the before project is the 115 line, and then the after the project complete, and this is a rendering. It always amazes me how realistic renderings can be. But you can tell it's a taller pole. You have two lines on the same pole. But it means that we have a little bit of a wider corridor because the tree impact or potential for tree impact grows a little bit with those taller poles. I want to note on this project, because if you may get questions from your constituency, especially since it's coming up into this area, we have a dedicated stakeholder engagement manager. So we have somebody who is dedicated to this project, doing on the ground and direct contact with property owners or people who are impacted by these lines and these changes. And so he will start to make, and has already, but continue to make contacts with people in the Woodfin area as it impacts their property. So if you get questions or you have questions, absolutely you can reach out to me. I can put you in touch with that person, but that's what they're there for. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, and it may have been on there and I just didn't know to look for it at that moment. These lines, what area is that supposed to impact?
I'll go back if you don't mind.
Okay, so so as far as Woodfin is concerned, is this Riverside Drive? Is this?
So this is just to the, I can't touch it, I'm sorry. To the left, and actually the line runs down Olivet Road.
So
That red, you see the kind of the red border line? That runs down Olivet. So you go past the New Liberty Church, it would be on the right. And then you'll have kind of an open area. And our existing substation is, as you go around the curve, there's a dirt road and a Duke Energy gate there. It sits there to the right. So this transmission line comes into the back side of that substation.
okay.
So it kind of comes through the back property areas.
So as far as Elk Mountain and Riverside, the battery section that you're talking about, that would not have any changes like that?
That's correct. That's correct. And it's tying into the system a little bit differently.
Okay.
But you are correct. This transmission line, I think it's important and that it is a separate project from the battery, but they're being implemented. It's close in time.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. I did want to touch on the Woodfin solar site because this is also in Woodfin. You guys have a lot of projects going on in Woodfin. You're also probably familiar, or at least have driven past this and seen it. It's located on 25 acres of retired landfill. Duke Energy is leasing the landfill from Buncombe County. And ultimately it allows the county to reach nearly 20% of its 2030 renewable energy goals. So it's beneficial to the county. It's of course beneficial to Duke Energy and customers. And if you want to quantify, it's about 1,000 homes annually. This project is in the final throes, and we look forward to it coming online this year.
So it's not online at all?
It is not online.
Oh,
It
okay.
is not, but it will be soon. I know it looks so ready. We have fencing around that. It's a really unique project in the fact that it's a capped landfill. So the implementation has been really, I think, special and unique. It's been a great partnership with the county. Okay, Adam? You go.
Thank you for allowing me to come speak with you this afternoon, evening, about some of the distribution work that we're going to be doing in the Woodfin area. As Jennifer mentioned, I'm the engineering director for the Mountain Zone, which is from east of, just west of Statesville, all the way to Andrews. So we cover a pretty big area. So my team does the design work for a lot of these major projects, or all of these major projects that we're going to be talking about. So for the town of Woodfin itself, the main work that we're going to be doing is out of our Elk Mountain substation, and we call it substation optimization. So substation optimization is a program that we're working toward, we optimize a substation at a time. So we have higher priority work. We try to do it all for that entire substation at one time so that we get more bang for the buck, I guess, from a reliability standpoint. We get it all done at one time. So within the Elk Mountain substation, we have about 20 miles of overhead reconductor work. And that reconductor work will be mostly on tap lines off of the main corridor from along Highway 25, Merriman Avenue, Weaverville Highway, up that section. It won't be impacting traffic too much on the main corridor because most of the tap lines that we'll be working on are off that, so we'll be off smaller streets along that corridor. And then we also have a fair amount of work that we're going to be doing along Riverside Drive as well. We've got about 75 new poles, so a lot of pole replacements, new single point changeouts all along the circuits that feed out of the Elk Mountain substation. And we have multiple reclosers. So may not know what a recloser is. It's a switch that allows us to sectionalize when we have a fault. So if we have a tree fall in the line, this recloser will open up and allow power will be de-energized for the customers beyond that switch. It allows power to stay on ahead of the switch. So we have multiple of those reclosers going in. It allows us to be able to backfeed and sectionalize to restore power quicker. So we also have a couple of new circuit ties that we're going to be installing. And circuit ties, it allows us to, again, to backfeed to restore power quicker when we do have faults, trees fall on the line. So I'm sure most of you are aware of the new substation that we're building on Aiken Road in Weaverville. Before that substation, we have our Lakeshore feeder that feeds out of Elk Mountain that goes up Weaverville Highway, Merriman Avenue. I don't know where the difference is there. So I don't know where it breaks. But the Lakeshore feeder feeds up through there. And before the new substation, we had different voltages between Weaverville and the Woodfin area. So we can't tie it with different voltages. The new substation will be at a voltage that matches the Elk Mountain substation, so we will be able to tie now and backfeed. So if we have a fault on the line up toward Aiken Road, we can backfeed either direction from Elk Mountain or the new station, the Aiken Road substation. So, and as we do that, we're designing it to have future smart grid self-healing capabilities. So we'll have reclosers, just like you see here, the 6 reclosers that allow us to automatically open reclosers and backfeed as we have faults on the system. That will happen automatically. So it will certainly help with faster outage restoration times. And then, how will I advance it, Jennifer? Very good, thank you. So as we get a lot of this work started, we do have public engagement folks that will be sending out postcards to customers to let them know that we're coming to your area soon. We'll be in your neighborhood. So we have folks that are going to be out front of the construction, letting people know that we're coming. And then obviously, as we have a need for scheduled interruptions, we will also have them reach out to schedule those interruptions with individual customers. Start date. So we'll be working really from now to the end of the year on all of these projects. So you'll see us around town. Yes.
Does that include the work you mentioned on Riverside Drive?
Yes.
I'm just imagining the traffic impact.
So, yeah, and most of the work that we're doing is not on the main traffic corridor. It's off the side streets off of the main corridor. So I think it'll be minimal traffic interruptions.
Okay.
So construction, I did not mention that we've got a fair amount of underground cable replacement that we're going to be doing as well. So we have a project where we're going out proactively and identifying cable that's starting to age, and we want to go ahead and proactively replace that cable before it starts to give us problems, start failing. So we're replacing cable as well. So we'll have more crews out doing work as well for that. And then for when we get done, you know, for a short amount of time, you'll see a couple of poles maybe sitting next to each other, and I'm sure you've seen that around town. You know, once we build ours, transfer our infrastructure to the new pole, the other utilities also have to transfer their lines to the new pole as well. So, you know, that'll be part of the end of the project, cleaning up, getting rid of those old poles, you know, making sure that we patch concrete and just make sure we leave the area as it looked before we arrived. I think that's all I've got.
Yeah. I just had one more slide, and I wanted to just speak briefly. I mentioned it at the beginning, but this is how the team that I'm on is distributed. So, as I noted, I have your territory. There's about 14 of me across the state of North Carolina. And then we have a South Carolina team as well. So as I said, we are here as the point of contact, and happy to be here and serve. If you have any questions, please reach out. That's all we got.
Questions? We hope you'll come back and talk about new technology as it emerges. I was fortunate enough to do a Land of Sky tour of the power generation station, and they teased us with some of the experimental things they're working on.
Yeah.
I'd really like to see more of that if you can, as you're able to release that information.
Absolutely.
It's amazing stuff. Thank you both for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is that much noise necessary out there? I understand. Okay. Next is the town manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. So over the last 30 days, there are a few updates I want to provide to kind of share all of what's been going on. Beginning with contracts, for the last 30 days, we've only had one contract come through, and that's for TSA Choice. This is the consultant group that handles all of our IT technology needs. It's an it's a monthly fee that we pay with a total cost to the town of $18,332. This is actually this is a renewal of our previous contract, and it's a little bit less than what we paid last time. So I am always excited to report that a contract has actually gone down in price, not up in price. That's a rarity, but that is the case in this situation. A few other things that have happened in the last month. The council held their annual strategic retreat on February 7th. Christy Carter was our facilitator, and she'll be working on a report of that meeting that we'll be able to share with all of you. And so there'll be some additional opportunity to kind of weigh on those priorities before we put it together in a nice reportable format and post it and have you all adopt it. We also got the final version of our town hall feasibility study and report that's posted on our website. What steps we take next, I think, will be part of the discussion with the upcoming budget retreat, budget work sessions beginning in March. And of course, that is the other big lift this month is just the pre-work that goes into preparing for the 2025 budget. Planning and facilities in the planning department. Of course, the big news is the Woodfin Together Comprehensive Plan. We'll have the public hearing later this evening. Nate Baker, our project manager consultant, is here, and he'll walk you through the plan and everything that's evolved up to this point. Planning staff have also been working on one piece of our affordable housing strategy, which has to do with manufactured housing. In March, we're expecting to bring forward, the slide is slightly incorrect, we're going to bring forward a zoning text amendment and a map amendment that would, more or less, it just provides more options for manufactured housing, particularly west of the river, and adds some protection to existing manufactured housing communities here on the east side. Planning staff have also created a steep slope informational pamphlet that's been shared with council that is posted on our website now. We are going to print those pamphlets and mail them to everybody in the steep slope area. We've got a number of large mailings coming up, so we'll probably just try to do it all in one big fell swoop. In our facilities division, we are working on a street acceptance policy. We have a draft that we anticipate bringing before council hopefully next month. We have a number of other policies that are also in the works, including special events and traffic calming. Those are probably going to come a little bit later, April, May, sometime in that time period. Our salt shed is nearing completion. Earlier this evening, you, as part of your consent agenda, adopted a very small budget amendment that will allow us to complete that project. And this is the time of year, the spring, where we start to kind of look at our facilities. So we're getting ready to do some spring facelift to the parks. So that's refreshing mulch, sand, doing some tidying up, some weed removal, getting the restrooms back online, work along those lines. Our community center also is in need of some minor upgrades, so we're going to be working on getting some quotes for that work as well. And then, of course, we have another discussion coming up in March is a potential lease for the community center. We've been approached by one of the Montessori schools that is located here in Woodfin, looking for a new home, and so we're examining the community center for that possibility. In stormwater and parks, first for stormwater, we are moving forward with getting quotes for the Church Street stormwater culvert repair. This is the worst of our infrastructure needs right now. This is the highest priority. We really shouldn't be waiting any longer, so we're going to move forward and try to get that taken care of. We are also looking at some of our other culvert maintenance requirements. There is some that we think that we can handle in-house, and then others that we're trying to prioritize for contractor work. We are also looking into doing some research into a special camera that's used to scope our stormwater pipes. And this is a special device that it's kind of like on a little remote controlled or remote operated little tractor. It's got little tracks and it kind of goes into the pipe and it does video as you go, so you get to really get a good picture of what's happening, where the crush has occurred or where the blockage is, what kind of blockage is it, what needs to be done. It's not an inexpensive piece of technology, and so we've been talking with other municipalities to kind of learn how it works, what the benefits are, is it worth it for us to move forward with. We think it is now as a result of that research, so we're going to start to look into some costs for that. We have also, we hope, completed our recruitment for a stormwater administrator. We made an offer earlier today and just trying to finish that offer out and hopefully bring them on board, we hope, beginning of April, end of March, early April. And then we are completing our investigations into all of the stormwater appeals that were filed. The easiest ones were done quickly, shortly after they came in. The more complicated ones are taking a little bit longer, require a little bit more research. So those are the ones that we're trying to wrap up at this stage.
Can you give us an idea of how many, what does that represent, 20, 100?
Any idea, Adrian? 15.
Okay.
How many of those have been allowed or rejected?
Do you have an idea? I would say certainly more have been denied than have been accepted. For folks who are not as familiar with our stormwater program, the appeal process, despite our efforts to try to communicate to the public that you don't appeal based on just just because you can or appeal to for financial reasons or sensibility. It's really just a very objective appeal process. Did we calculate the impervious surfaces correctly? Did we not? If we didn't, what kind of information can you share with us? Or can we come on site to measure the impervious surfaces and reassess? So there is some education that is happening with some of these appeals. And then for the Parks Department, Riverside Park and Taylor's Wave, the request for bids. So this has probably been the biggest lift this last month. We went through the bid process for Riverside Park and Taylor's Wave. As council knows, those bids came in over our project budget. So we're having to rescope the project, but we're trying to do it in such a way that it doesn't require re-permitting. And so that's taken a little combination of art and science to get it quite right and to get all of our community partners on board. So we anticipate posting the advertisement will go out at the end of the week. It'll probably be posted middle of next week. And we're going to do the minimum posting period, anticipating that we probably won't get the mandatory 3 bids, so we'll have to repost again. So this is all to say it's going to push the timeline out for the park construction to be initiated. We were hoping to kind of get started end of March, 1st of April. It's now looking more like mid-May. So that is going to kind of push us into the river a little bit later than we wanted to be. Yes, sir.
Or over budget were the initial bids?
Of the 2 bids, the lower of the 2 bids was $2.4 million over.
Over.
Yeah. So this is about $10-11 million project. This piece of WGB's about that much. So, you know, it's been such an extraordinary couple of years in terms of inflation and trying to stay on top of, you know, escalating costs for materials and labor. And so our consultants did, I think, an admirable job of trying to predict what those costs were, but didn't quite hit it on the mark, so.
Is there any effort, at least mentally, that we're going to pursue to close the gap for the scope of the project?
Yeah, absolutely. Our goal right now is to try to keep the project on track so that we can get started this year. So that's the effort to rescope it. So the money that we do have, we can do all of Taylor's Wave and a significant portion of Riverside Park. And then what the new bid would do is break the remaining work into 4 additional options. So as funding becomes available, we add in option 1. As more funding becomes available, we add in option 2. So it's a way to keep the project on track, not have to re-permit it or phase it, and hopefully just sort of move seamlessly from one chunk of the project to the next. So that's the goal.
Shannon, do you have an idea as to why we only received 2 bids? Is it the companies that do this? Are there not a lot of them, or is it the scope of the project?
It's hard to say. I mean, this is just my instinct speaking, or my intuition, but I do think working in the river to create, such a feature is something that would intimidate a lot of contractors. It's a pretty big project, so you need to be a contractor of a certain size to be able to complete the work. So I think those 2 reasons probably are the main. And, there are other contractors that could do this work, but it might not be convenient because they may be located in a different part of the country. We were very pleased with the 2 who did submit. They were both good, very good contractors who have good reputations. So we were happy, even though we got 2, we were very happy with the 2 that we got.
Ken, to answer your question about the closing the gap, I don't know how frequently staff level meetings are happening, but I think since we've gotten the original bids, I've been involved in at least like a meeting a week on this with county staff and kicking around ideas about different funding partners. Can't imagine what that means or how many meetings staff has been involved in since this. So there's a tremendous amount of work, and I think closing that gap is without a doubt the primary area of focus for town staff in all of municipal government right now.
Well, I'd love to know if there's a way or a reason for anybody else to get involved, if there's help that can be offered.
And to speak to Yolanda's question briefly, it's pretty specialized work. And I don't know that they're regionally or many contractors.
So you have to get 3 bids, yes?
Well,
or?
if you're gonna, so you have to have 3 bids on the lowest responsible bidder standard, which is what we were trying to do it. You have to have 3 bidders. If you don't, you have to re-advertise, but it only requires another week's advertising.
Okay, so.
And you can make it longer than that if you want to. But that's not really what's costing us. I think it's more the specialized work, and it's just a terrible bidding environment in the past, ever since COVID, really.
Okay, so we're not hampered by the fact that there may not be someone else out there willing to submit a bid? I mean, that would not hold us back.
If somebody came in with a bid, you'd have to, at this point, you'd have to question if you had those 2 bids and they're that much higher and somebody came in on budget, why are you that much lower than the other ones we got? Are you really putting it all in here? But anyway.
Yeah, we have had some conversations with our lowest bidder. We do think that there are some ways to approach the project that would result in a little bit of a cost savings. It's not a huge amount, it's not 2.4 million, but it would help. We do also have one grant pending that we should know in mid-April, and that's over $1 million if we were to be awarded. So that would take care of like that first option. We estimate that the base contract, which we do have funding for, will take approximately 12 months to complete. So it buys us about a year to try to close that gap. That 1.1 million would go a long way to closing that gap. And then there's other grants that we're looking at right now as well. Great questions. Anything else? So the last thing on the parks that I wanted to mention is our Parks and Greenways Advisory Committee recently completed a review of the restrooms, the plan for adding restrooms to Silverline Park. They reviewed 3 different options. They went with what we call the National Park option, which is what Buncombe County is also using. It's sort of a middle of the road. It's not the cheapest, but it's not the most expensive either. So I think it's a good fit for Silverline Park. At the last meeting, the PGAC also reviewed the overall master plan update for the park, which looks at adding pickleball courts. They developed a plan that included anywhere from 3 to 4 courts, depending on whether or not there's interest in doing an additional playground so that parents playing pickleball could have small children nearby on the playground. So they were batting around some different options there. We are looking, hopefully, at adding at least one handicap accessible court. So that also kind of changes the master plan layout a little bit. But the conversation was really productive. The consultants are going to do a little bit of master plan refinement, design refinement based on the feedback from the PGAC, and then share that out with them for any more additional thoughts. But hopefully that'll be completed soon. And that concludes my summary. I normally would also cover police, but we're going to invite Chief Dykes up now. He's going to do the annual report for the police department.
All right, good evening. So the police department, obviously, we try to get together our figures at the end of the year and kind of give a snapshot of what happened in the last calendar year. And so first I want to say a special thank you to Captain Ammons, who was here earlier, because he did the brunt of pulling all these facts and figures together for us so that we could put it in this presentation format. And also thanks for Shannon for revising my organizational chart, because I couldn't get the lines to work. So she actually did that one for me. And really this again is kind of a snapshot of the police department and how we stand today or at the end of the year, and some of the things that we've done, and also kind of where we're going forward. So looking at our overall organizational chart, we have this, shows our command staff and our patrol staff, which is the one there on the left, our 4 sergeants, patrol officers, and then our detective division and our evidence custodian / admin person that we have. That breaks down into our budget, which shows our allocations for positions. 1 chief of police, me, the captain, that we added this past year that we're very grateful for. The lieutenant position, 4 patrol sergeants, 10 patrol officers when we're fully staffed. 2 investigators, and again our evidence custodian / administrative assistant. And on the books at the end of the year, we had 4 reserve officers who are actually now contributing to the department, and we're getting able to utilize them. All right. So one of the things that we worked on, and actually there's some irony, we have a mission and we have a vision for the department and some guiding principles. This is the mission statement as it stands as of 2023. We also had a PBL group, our problem-based learning group, that met last year and helped develop a new mission, vision statement, and core values. We had revisited those and actually published out the new ones today, but this is the old one. So we will get those to you as well, because This is a big part of a police department, and actually any organization, is knowing where you're going, right? This is what we want to live by, this is what we want to do. And so our old mission said, the mission of the Woodfin Police Department is to work with all citizens, preserve life, maintain human rights, protect property, and promote individual responsibility and community involvement. And that's great, and that's exactly what we want to do. And our new one kind of has some of those same things in there, and I don't have it up here with me. But again, I'll get that to you. But this guides what we do, along with our core values: honesty, integrity, compassion, loyalty, professionalism, and dedication. So those are the things that we instill into our officers, as this is what we need to do all the time, right? Doing the right thing, doing it all the time. So those are the core values. Now, how did we involve some of those? Well, one of the big things that we try to do is community outreach, right? Was part of a training the last month where we talk about community engagement and community outreach. You know, community engagement is every time an officer interacts with somebody, right? That's our opportunity for community engagement, whether it's a call for service, waving to the kid at the park, or playing with them over at the school, or whatever it might be. Those are our community engagement. But those aren't always planned. However, community outreach is the things that we do on purpose. Right? These are the things that help us build great relationships with the folks here in town. And sometimes those aren't always the folks in town. We also go to other locations, because if we can instill trust and partnerships throughout the area, that translates back to here. So some of the things that we do for our community outreach, and one of them coming up rather quickly, is the Woodfin 5K. We're heavily involved with that. We've did our National Night Out event, relaunched our Woodfin Public Safety Day. Operation Medicine Drop, we did the first one of those last year. That's where we take unused prescription drugs so that we can get those properly disposed of, and they don't end up in either the, in the sewage system where people flush them down the toilet, or they end up in wrong hands where they can be abused or, cause harm. Reynolds Mountain Christian Academy Transportation Day, we've been doing that for several years. That's where they have all sorts of vehicles up there, trash trucks, electric company vehicles, all these other things, where the students get a chance to look at those and kind of put hands on them. Newbridge Baptist Field Day, we've been participating in that in a couple of years. Even though Newbridge Baptist is just outside of Woodfin, they really are part of our community. So we're glad to take part of that. Buncombe County Sheriff's Office did a trunk or treat at 35 Woodfin, which is the old health department, or the Family Justice Center now. So that was a big regional thing. They brought like Black Mountain, Weaverville, all those folks out for that. Apartment information sessions. This is something we started last year, is where we partnered with some of the apartment complexes in town and had officers go out while they were doing events. Like they did a cookout at the Newbridge Apartments one day, and our officers were invited down, where we gave out information, interacted with the residents there, exchanged information, gave them general, crime safety tips. We did that there. We did that at they keep changing the name of it. But the apartments next to the CVS on Weaverville Highway, I think is that not Heritage?
Hawthorne.
Hawthorne, there we go. The Hawthorne Apartments, we did that there. We also did an event at Now Harmony, there at Cowboys Way, the retirement center. So those are our information sessions where we got out and did that. And then we also worked with some of our Latino community to make an outreach group to try to foster some trust along with the Latino community. Yes, sir.
Chief, would it be possible for you to publish this with dates for 2024? Which dates you have, so we could put
We
those in our
can. As we
calendars?
make those dates and as those come available, we will definitely put those out. Some of them are set already, like National Night Out is the first Tuesday in August. We know that one's going to happen. Operation Medicine Drop is an annual event. I don't have the date off the top of my head, but that's planned nationally as well. But the others, as we find the dates for those, we will let it happen. Let everyone else know. Some things like Reynolds Mountain Christian Academy, they usually call us like about the week before, to let us know that they're going to be doing Transportation Day. And some of the other ones that we get a little more outreach or we plan. In fact, we have, the next slide talks about our community. I'm sorry, there's some pictures there from some of those events.
So the 5K is April 26th. When is National Night Out? Did you
National
have a
Night
date
Out
for
is
it?
the first Tuesday in August.
Thank you.
So one of the things we're going to talk about in the achievements, and I'm kind of skipping a little bit ahead though, is we formed a community outreach team last year, right? And we actually have a meeting with them tomorrow where we're going to start setting some of those dates. We're going to talk about doing the some more of the apartment complex meetings. We're going to talk about plan early, setting dates for our public safety day, other events that we can do in the community, because it is our intent is to increase the planned amount of community outreach that we do, right? That's, again, we want to build that trust, foster those relationships within the community, and so that's one of the big goals that we've set for them. So the achievements that we did from last year for 2023 is we finally completed the revised policy manual and implemented that through Lexipol. That was a very painstaking process. That was many, many hours of reviewing policy and then having their staff, which is a staff of attorneys, vet to make sure it fell under the best practices and everything was legal, and then get that back to us. And now all of our officers have access to that in an online format. And we are working on the next step of that, where we will do trainings and also make that available to the public where they can see what our policies are. Completed the problem-based learning group exercise of recruitment and retention, where they presented to the council, had some recommendations to increase our recruitment and retention. Established the new community outreach team that I just told you about. Reestablished some community engagement events, again, the Public Safety Day, planning the National Night Out, trying to get back into those, that post-COVID interacting with the public. We created the captain position. One of the things that came from the problem-based learning group was the added the tuition reimbursement and on-call pay, some incentives for our officers, one to get that higher education, and also to reward folks who are stuck on call. In other words, they can't go out of town, they can't have an adult beverage, they have to be able to respond quickly, and kind of, even though they're not working, they're still have to be ready to go. Initiated our traffic stop data collection, which we are now sending all that information to the State Bureau of Investigations, and we've linked that where that's available. And then we initiated the police trainee program, where we hired a cadet before they were sent to basic law enforcement training, and that Officer Godwin, she completed that training. She's completed her field training, is now out on patrol. Actually will be out on patrol tomorrow. So that was one of the big achievements from last year. All right, so now let's get down to the numbers part. And this is what Captain Ammons did a lot of work for us on. Last year we had 6,706 calls for service. These are the ones that we document into our computer-aided dispatch system. That doesn't mean every call for service necessarily gets documented. Sometimes we have folks walk into the front that doesn't get recorded, but a lot of those do. And here's kind of the breakdown of the most of where those calls were. We had 615 extra checks. This is where the residential checks, folks asked for us to check on their property while they're out of town. Our contact publics, motor vehicle crashes, you'll see that number of 248 is how many we had reported total. That number actually should be higher for the calls, because sometimes we'll get a call of a motor vehicle crash and we get there and it's not a crash. Might just be somebody broken down on the side of the road, something like that. So I'm not sure why that number got changed to that. 115 civil disturbances, suspicious persons, investigations. That investigate is anything generic. Hey, I don't know what's going on. Can you send the police? And so we go out and see what's going on. Suspicious vehicles, stranded motorists, 210 of those. 154 animal calls. Again, though we have an agreement with Buncombe County animal control for pickup of animals. We are still the first responders when it comes to animal control. So we have to go out first and see what's going on. Is it an animal that's been abandoned, struck by a vehicle, things like that. 251 alarm calls, which since we have implemented our alarm ordinance, that number has decreased. It's a little higher than it was for 2022, but not significantly. It is down from the 300 plus that we had been seeing before the implementation of the alarm program. And then 911 traffic stops in 2023.
Chief, one quick question on
Yes.
combining the motor vehicle crash and the traffic stop. The 3 top locations where these things are happening.
We will get to the traffic crashes. I will get to that answer because that's one of our graphics coming up. As for traffic stops, I don't have that data off the top of my head where we're making the most traffic stops. But when we look at kind of the statistic-based and evidence-based policing, usually where you have your most crashes or where you want to do your most traffic enforcement. And I don't think we're actually doing those numbers right now. But as I said, I'll get to where our crashes are occurring. In fact, that's on the next slide. Look at that. So in 2023, we had 248 reportable crashes. In other words, we did an actual report for these crashes. Okay. The top left shows you the number of crashes, talks about the number of vehicles that are involved in each of those crashes, the total number of occupants. Even though there's a little line there, fatalities, we had 0 traffic crash fatalities in 2023. For the previous 5 years, our average was actually 0.8 for traffic crash fatalities. So we always like when we have a 0 number. In 2022, we had 2. 2021, we had 1 and 0 and 0. 0 and 1. Yeah. So, again, we like having a 0 number. And then our injuries are shown there as well. Now, where do our crashes happen? We're a little stymied by our traffic crash reporting software on the exact locations because it has a hard time separating US 19, which is what we call Future 26, because it's not technically I-26 yet. Right? We're waiting on DOT, and we all know DOT will keep waiting. But it has a hard time differentiating US 19 from US 19 business, which is Weaverville Road when you go north of the hotspot. Okay, so that intersection there of North Merriman Avenue, New Bridge, all that. That section of Weaverville Highway north is US 19 business. And then that section south is US 25, right? So, but when we look, 139 of our 238 traffic crashes, which is about 56%, happened on U.S. routes. All right. The next highest number, which actually I found an error in this today and I didn't have an opportunity to correct it. It says that 44 of our crashes occurred on state secondary routes. It's actually 38 happened on state secondary routes. 6 of those crashes should have been on the NC highways, but they got labeled wrong. So it's actually 21 crashes that happened on Riverside Drive. Okay, so about 10% of our crashes happened on Riverside Drive. 15% of our crashes, 15% of our crashes occurred on state secondary routes. That's Elk Mountain Road, Old Marshall Highway, Old Lesser Highway. Anything that is not maintained by the town of Woodfin is going to be one of the state secondary routes, right? Except for private roads or parking lots. Okay. On local roads, we had about 6% of our crashes, or 15 crashes there. 2 crashes on private roads, and then 29 crashes that were reported in parking lots. So that's where most of our crashes are occurring, are U.S. routes, state secondary, then parking lots. And then that bottom, again, gives us kind of a historical analysis of where traffic crashes are. Any questions so far?
Are these speed related or human error? What?
So, again, our software is not great for pulling the primary reasons for crashes. I will tell you that out of I probably worked half a dozen crashes or so myself last year, and inattention is probably one of the highest things that we're running across. It's hard to prove distracted driving, which is, we all see it, the folks on their phones instead of when they should be driving. But when we can show that they were either following too closely or they failed to react in time, is due to an inattention. So that's one of the biggest factors that I've seen. So our 2023 investigations, we had 87 investigations that were referred to our criminal investigations division, right? That doesn't mean we had just 87 incidents that were investigated. This is how many went to our CID, okay? And our CID clearance rate was 55%. Now, that sounds kind of low, but let's put that into some perspective. Let's look at the national averages. The national average in 2022, according to the U.S. Department of Justice, the clearance rate for homicides, right, which is you'd think to be the most investigated crime, of which we had 0 in 2023. But their clearance rate, the highest one, was 52.3%. And then as we go on down the line, those numbers keep dropping. As aggravated assaults, 41%, violent crimes, 36%, rapes, 26%.
Chief, those national rates, that's all police departments?
That's all police departments across the U.S.
So is it, it may not be possible, but are there any statistics for clearance rates for towns the size of Woodfin, that kind of thing?
I would have to dig into that to find. I went looking for rates today on the FBI site and then the DOJ. I found these numbers.
Understood.
So that I would, it's hard to say.
Okay.
But again, our overall clearance rate was 55%, which is above the national average. And then that's again for our CID division. Our overall clearance rate for the entire department was 83.9%. Right, so that's when a patrol officer gets a case to investigate as well. Now, some of these are cleared immediately upon the incident happening. If we catch somebody in the commission of the crime, that's an immediate closure. But still, overall, that 83.9% clearance rate for every incident that's reported for the town is where we stand. But for our CID alone. And also, we had for part of the year, we only had one investigator who was a part-time investigator who's also one of our patrol sergeants. So that's why the number of cases is a little bit down, because we assigned some of those back to patrol. But then again, that 55% clearance rate. All right, and then finally we have our crime reporting. Now, in 2020, the Uniform Crime Report, which used to be Part A and Part B crimes, was replaced by NIBRS, which is the National Incident-Based Reporting System. So UCR used to take the top crime that occurred during an incident, and that was the only crime that was reported. All right, so my example was if we had a robbery where somebody got shot and a car was stolen, and they stole a whole bunch of stuff and set fire to the building on the way out. Right? We'd have 5 different crimes, but UCR would only take the top crime, and you only had one of those that was reported. Now with NIBRS, as long as they fall into different categories, they would report each of those crimes. Okay. So using the new NIBRS numbers, in 2023 we had 66 crimes against person reported. And this is some of your Part A offenses such as homicide, but also includes assaults, aggravated assault, simple assault, any type of sexual assaults, Robberies are included in the crimes against person. So we had a total of 66 crimes against persons, 142 crimes against property. This is larcenies, right? If someone were to steal, shoplift from the hotspot, that would be included as crime against property. 142 of those, 70 crimes against society, which is a little misleading. This is your offenses that, where we claim society is the victim. This could be possession of drugs or selling of drugs, that society becomes the victim. But the other is also included in those because the others are your Part B offenses, such as driving while impaired. All of your traffic offenses are in that other, but they're also crimes against society. So they're kind of the same person victim that's included in those.
So does that mean that crimes against society numbers are a subset of other?
Well, I think, in a way, yes. So the crimes against society are the more serious crimes, and then I think the other are what they call the Part B offenses, which were the lesser misdemeanors. Again, your traffic offenses fall into that other category. Questions? All right, and then lastly, our 2023 arrests. In 2023, we arrested 159 males and 53 females, and then we have a breakdown by demographic. Any questions? All right, then, so where are we going? What are we doing next? Again, we talked about our mission statement, our vision statement, and we're moving forward. So what do we plan to do for 2024? Well, one of the things that we'd like to do, again, is our problem-based learning group. I think that was very impactful for the department, and we've discussed some of the things that we'd like to do for that, and we want to do a train-the-trainer. In other words, we want to teach all of our officers how to do problem-based learning so that we don't have to necessarily rely on outside consultants to come in to do that we can be the experts. And if we have an issue that we're facing, such as speeding on Riverside Drive, or we have vandalism occurring on Breckenridge Parkway, where someone has defaced speed limit signs. Instead of using the tried and true models, we come in and we analyze that problem. How can we best fix it and come up with the solutions that way? Instead of, again, let's just try to arrest our way out of it because we know that's not really the solution. Also looking ahead, update the fleet with 5 new vehicles, including our hybrid vehicle. Those should be on the way hopefully April to May. Re-examine this pay step grade plus other incentives so that we can retain the quality officers that we have and also attract seasoned officers from other agencies. Submit grants for body-worn cameras, bulletproof vests, along with other miscellaneous community grants. A lot of the funding that we get for our community outreach we do through these community grants. Establish regular listening sessions with patrol and the public. Again, some of the things that we planned for this year for our community outreach, events like Coffee with a Cop, right? Have listening sessions where the public can come and interact with the police department and address their concerns. Sign agreements with Buncombe County for PSIP and CDE. The Public Safety Interoperability Partnership is what we use for our software for records management. We actually have a meeting coming up next week where we're going to look at what the future of PSIP is. Is it new software? Where are we going to go with that? And then centralized data entry. What will be the future with them as well? We'll look at our current agreements and then move forward with that. And again, participate in the PSIP transition as we move forward into new software. All right, and that is my report. A lot of information crammed in. Yes, sir.
One more question. I'm the new person. Where are we in staffing? I saw 19 sworn, 1 non-sworn. Is that adequate? Is that high? Is it low?
So that is actually one of the things that we are looking at is what are our numbers compared to other agencies. When we look at Weaverville, I believe they are at 16 full-time officers. Black Mountain is at 23 full-time officers. Fletcher, which is another comparable to our size, right, population-wise, is at 22 full-time officers. And that's their sworn officers, not their civilian staff. But we also have to look at what are our calls for service, what are our times that we're using for that. So we are probably population-wise, the call for service-wise, a little below the average. And we're actually looking at some of that stuff when we're doing our pay step grade study to try to figure out, are we competitive with other agencies? What are their staffing levels like?
How many positions are unfilled right
That's the next
now?
question. As of today, we are 4 down. And I'll break the news, that's going to change on Thursday, where we'll go 5 down. We have another officer who's resigning, his last day is Thursday.
So is crime trending consistent with the last 5 years, or has it gone down or up in our area?
So we've not actually seen a true increase in crime. Again, our calls for service and our investigations kind of shows that we are, I don't want to say stagnant, but we're not showing any hot spots. We're not showing really any real increases. We are seeing a shift in some of the things that we're dealing with. And again, it's one of these, thankfully, our overdose numbers have actually slightly gone down. But I sat in a meeting last week where we started talking about some new drugs that are coming into the area, which when they are being introduced, overdoses are starting to increase. And as those start coming into the area, if we see that happening here, there's a good chance that that number's going to go up. So again, our crimes that we're seeing are not really spiking in any particular area. So it's kind of remaining steady as the number of crimes that we've had.
So compared to our neighbors, are we the same, better, or worse?
That's a great question that I don't have an answer to right now, but I will
Okay,
get back
you
to
can
you
get back to
on
me.
that. I definitely will get back to you with the crime rates for other municipalities in the area. We usually receive the 2022, tells you how far ahead the state is. 2022 numbers come out in about August, so I should have access to those now. 2023 numbers, they're due by March, and about August they'll have those, so what those numbers were.
Thank you.
Chief, I don't know if you do a formal exit interview process, but can you put some explanation behind the attrition? We all know it's a competitive market.
It is a competitive market. I will say that the two folks that we have, the one that we lost as on Sunday was his last day, and the one that's leaving on Thursday. Both are moving out of town. They're moving actually out of state to jobs that are, one that has higher pay, higher flexibility for hours, but it's also not a police position. The other one has moved out of state because he had found a house out of state many months back and had been commuting back and forth. And his answer to me was, I'd love to stay, but I can't drive an hour every day to come to work. And again, that's one of the things that we really want to look at when we do our pay and step grade study, because we want to figure out what we can do to retain the officers that we have, because we have some great folks.
Saved by the bell. Thank you, Chief. We appreciate it very
Thank you all.
much.
Yeah, thank you.
They're not here.
They're not coming.
I don't think so. I don't think so. We skipped that already. Yeah.
But
I
go
said-
ahead and do it.
It's on your agenda, so.
Do we need to do it? Well, I said since they're not here, we were going to skip it. Can we do that?
Yeah, there's no objection.
Okay, item 1 on presentations and reports was the proclamation regarding Pastor Jack Gassaway. Since he nor any of his family is here, is there any objection to delaying that to either a future meeting or to be done offline?
They're not going to be coming. They didn't intend to come. They
They
just
did.
asked to have the proclamation.
I did not know that.
And,
Should we read the proclamation?
Just
Okay.
incorporate it into the record.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Well, so I think we can just incorporate it into the minutes. I don't think there's no need to read it.
All right. It is signed and sealed, so it will be entered into the record. Thank you for that. For future reference, I will know what to do. Okay, so that completes presentations and reports. We're going to move into new business, and the first item is regarding, and I believe this is the first of 2 public hearings we'll have. Review and approval of ordinance 2024-03, adopting the Woodfin Together Comprehensive Plan. We're fortunate to have Nate Baker from Quantum here, who's going to give us an overview.
And it's one public hearing. If it's not adopted tonight, we just continue the public hearing to the next meeting.
Okay, I thought our intent was not to vote on it tonight. Okay,
All right, hello. Good evening, Mayor and Council, members of the public, staff. My name is Nate Baker. I'm a consultant with Quantum Consultants. I'm a community planner. I've been doing community planning as a consultant and also with local governments for over a decade. I'm joined by my colleague with Traffic Planning and Design, Christy Carter. I live in Durham, North Carolina, and Christy lives just down the road from here, so she's very familiar with Woodfin. We, for the past year and a quarter, have been working with you all on the Woodfin Together Comprehensive Plan. Comprehensive plans are both a process and a document. And so I'll describe to you today a little bit about the process that we've gone through over the past year and a quarter. You all have the document. The document's online, so the public is able to review the document. And we've been refining it over the past, we finalized it, and we've been refining a little bit over the past 2 months. I think we had a full draft that was made available in late 2023. So just today, we'll talk a little bit about where we are in the project, a little bit of an overview of the plan chapters. Of course, you all already have the document itself, and then potential actions or next steps here. So in mid to late 2022, there was already a process in place with a separate consultant. They conducted a first round of community engagement. We came in after that consultant in the winter of 2022 with a new plan for the project. They actually did a pretty good job of community engagement and had a lot of good input for us to use. So we broke this process out into 4 different phases. Phase 1 is we call research and analysis. We just looked into background and context of the community. That's really where we developed the plan for the plan that we were going to conduct here. Starting in spring of 2023, we started phase 3. This included 2 separate community engagement touch points. So this is where the comprehensive plan is the process, so we're going through the process here. The first phase in January and February of 2023 was what we called listening and learning. We reviewed thoroughly all of the community input that was provided from the prior engagement that had been conducted. And then Christy and I came and we parked ourselves here and we sat under the fluorescent lights and we spoke with a lot of different stakeholders, elected and appointed officials, community member groups, and we call those interviews. We sit down for 30 to 45 minutes per group, take thorough notes, and then on the back end of that, create a little memo of everything that we've learned from that process. We take everything from the first round of community engagement, and we work to develop a vision and goals that we think reflect the community input to that point to carry us to the next round of community engagement. And by the way, during this process and through the community engagement, we are working closely with a steering committee. Councilmember Khan, you were on the steering committee, as were other council members at the time, as well as other members of the community were part of the steering committee. Throughout community engagement, we met with the steering committee 5 different times, and they helped provide guidance on policy and on how we would actually conduct the community engagement throughout the process. That second round of community engagement is called Guide Our Future. This was conducted in summer of 2023. We were at the community center. We held 2 in-person events. We had online community engagement. We also attended a food drive. We went to Black Locust. We had engagement in English, and my colleague Jonathan Sedesedes came, and we conducted community engagement in Spanish as well. And this is where we refined some of the policy preferences, where we tested the draft vision and goals that we created. And then starting in the summer of 2023 is when we began to draft the plan. We held 3 meetings with the steering committee, going through different rounds of drafts of the plan, and that culminated in a initial public review draft that then went out to the community, and as part of the touch point number 3 of community engagement, and the final touch point of community engagement called Explore the Plan. So the community is able to explore the plan. That's where we continue to do online engagement and re-engage with planning board, steering committee, and other members of the public, and we continue to refine the plan from there. We are now in the 4th and final phase of the comprehensive plan, just finalization as we finish up the plan document. So coming out of the initial touch points for the community engagement, we definitely noticed some themes, some common themes. When you hold several meetings with several people across multiple days, you start hearing the same things, and that's helpful for us to theme out the issues. And we put them into a few different buckets. Cost of living was a common theme, and we heard about ensuring that current residents would be able to afford to stay, that was important for people in the community, that maintaining an affordable cost of living was important, and that connecting residents with jobs and training was an important value. Quality of place, people love Woodfin. We love Woodfin. We've coming out here. Focused growth and placemaking in activity centers, that was one theme. More options for services and retail and restaurants was another common theme we heard. The French Broad River came up a lot. Obviously, it runs straight through. It's this blue spine that crosses the town. So reimagining the town's relationship with the French Broad River was really, really important. We heard a lot of that. Restoring the river and its habitats, and then creating people-centered activity along the riverfront. And then environmental protection, so protecting steep slopes, views, wildlife habitat, managing stormwater runoff, incredibly important, and then creating a green, sustainable, and resilient town. These were all things that we heard. Other supporting themes that we heard were maintaining that small town feel that is unique to what Woodfin is, expanding safe transportation options to the extent that we can, and then providing high-quality public services. So just a quick overview of chapters, because you have the actual chapters in front of you. We built off of everything that we heard in this first rounds of engagement, and categorize those into 5 different categories. So a livable built pattern, a sustainable town, opportunities to thrive, great government, and transportation options. And what we did with each of those buckets was we built a working closely with the steering committee and the community, a community vision. So this is what we actually call a community vision framework. So we have a very high-level vision statement that was refined with the community and with the steering committee. And then we have 5 separate sort of vision statements that correspond with each of these different buckets, each of these different chapters. And Here we are looking at the cover page of the plan. Here we see my colleague Jonathan when we were down at Black Locust. And then each of the 5 different chapters. And then what you see in the bottom right is the appendix. So the appendix is where we place the implementation actions. So just to walk through, there are 2 very meaty chapters and then 3 chapters that look more at goals and policies. So I'll walk through each of these. The first very meaty chapter, for obvious reasons, is a livable built pattern. So we're looking at land use here. This includes the Woodfin's planning principles, the conceptual growth framework map, so looking at the concept of how Woodfin will grow over time, the future land use map, an opportunities map, a utility service and annexations criterion. I can walk through any of those if you have questions at the end. And there are only 2 goals, and this has the fewest number of goals, and that's because so much of the actual goals and policies is embedded in these other pieces. So the goals are Woodfin's built environment will be sustainable and equitable, and Woodfin will seek to remain an affordable place to live and work. The second very meaty chapter is the transportation options chapter. This is one that Christie's team worked a significant amount on. And we're able to do some pretty fine-grained planning on Woodfin's various corridors. I'm looking at the future of I-26 widening, Elk Mountain Road, and these other areas listed in front of you. There are 3 goals in the transportation options chapter. Recognize and support greenways as a viable and key transportation connector for the community. Woodfin's amenities are accessible on foot and by bicycle, and a reliable bus system that people can use to commute and make trips to Asheville and Weaverville. Chapter 3 is opportunities to thrive. Just reading the goals here. Jobs are accessible locally and residents have opportunities to both live and work in Woodfin. Goal 3.2, a thriving modern local economy that offers a variety of job opportunities, an equitable and inclusive local economy for all residents, a town that provides educational excellence for everyone, and finally, access to programs, facilities, and other resources that promote healthy outcomes. Second to last one here, great government. So walking through the goals here, Woodfin residents receive high-quality public services and facilities that promote the health, safety, and well-being of all community members. Woodfin residents have access to excellent parks, recreation, and community facilities. Woodfin will be an active participant in planning and policymaking efforts that impact the town across the region. And Woodfin is a place where residents have opportunities to engage on community issues. And then finally, a sustainable town. So a town with plentiful green spaces connected together and interwoven by green corridors, a clean watershed that enhances sustainability and resiliency, an energy efficient town with green transportation energy options, and Woodfin is climate resilient and mitigates risk to landslides, flooding, and wildfires. So that is the collection of chapters, the collection of goals. I would just mention sort of the hierarchy here. We have the vision and the goals, which we walk through. Underneath each of the goals is a set of policies. So for each of those goals that I stated, there are 3, 4, 5 other policies, and then the appendix includes the actions that correspond with each of those chapters. So the way to think about the policies and the actions is to think the goal is the future outcome. And sometimes in plans I actually call them just outcomes. The policy is a little bit more passive. It's something to look at when something changes in the community. It helps guide decision making. And then an action is more proactive. Once this plan is adopted, what are the next steps that you all want to take to implement the plan? And so finally, the next steps, this is the final slide. We're here at the town council with you all today, and this is a public hearing, and you all can adopt the draft today or can continue the public hearing. And then once that is complete, we can finalize and transmit all of the files to you, GIS files, all the other files to your staff, and it'll be time to start implementing the plan, which is exciting. So short and sweet. And I'm here to answer any questions. Christie can answer questions, and Ricky is here as well, and he was deeply involved in the process.
I have one. You mentioned earlier that you're still working on some final portions of it. Does that mean there's more wrap-up to do, or do we have the final draft?
You have the final draft.
Okay.
Yeah, we might change something like right now, I think it says public hearing draft. It'll just say final draft on the cover, little things like that, if there are any grammatical things that we want to
Okay.
update. Yeah.
We have received a few very minor updates or edits, and we've already communicated those to Nate, so we'll get those incorporated into the final draft.
Questions, concerns from council members?
I have a concern/question, and Shannon and I have, in writing, discussed this a little bit. Being the first west of the river council person, I hold some of that near and dear. And we've talked about particularly the transportation chapter, does not mention it, and there are some good reasons for that. In some cases, they may not want improvements or having a vision laid on it. And I don't know whether this should be a motion, but I would like to wrap my mind around what we're doing around de-annexation before I commit to this. And I know you're working on that.
Okay, well, there
I don't know
will,
I don't know that it would affect it
We won't have an
materially.
answer to the de-annexation. We won't know what's gonna happen for possibly years. So if we can, I think at this point, we could commit to identifying community wants and needs on the west side of the river.
Okay, my impression was, with council, you were gonna be preparing some kind of summary of where do you think that'll take a long time?
the de-annexation itself, if it was to happen, is at least a year and a half away.
That's actually not what I'm sorry if I wasn't
Okay.
clear. I mean, you're looking at some of the arguments and quantifying some of the pluses and minuses and looking at the legal status. I don't know if that's gonna take a long time. I don't wanna hold up the plan unnecessarily, but it seems like that has potentially a role to play in how we think about the plan.
Are you literally saying that you don't think across the river has been addressed adequately in the plan?
It depends on what I see in terms of arguments.
Because this is for the whole town. This is not separating segments out.
Right, but
So it's to
the
be-
transportation chapter does get kind of specific.
Yeah, but if there's something lacking, let's talk about it. This is the time.
Shannon, can I make a comment on that?
Yeah.
On broader transportation issues for that side of the river, we heard nothing. Through surveys, through our interviews, all of those community engagement steps. So that's why there weren't any specific recommendations for anything on that side of the river. The exception on that being comments that came back through, Shannon and Ricky forwarded those to us about bicycle and pedestrian connectivity. And some of the conversation that we had is, Adrian and I are waiting I have the notice to proceed. I'm waiting for NCDOT to send Adrian an email so that we can start on the bicycle and pedestrian plan. Where that, and the way we have talked to NCDOT about doing that plan is kind of like an addendum to Woodfin's comp plan. So when we come back over the next year, when we do the work, specifically digging into bike ped and greenway issues in a more specific way, and that's a more appropriate place to get really specific than the comp plan is. When I kind like the way we've talked about it is we'll say this is a addendum or a part two or just, this other piece of the comp plan. There be that opportunity to address some of those comments that came through about bicycle connectivity to west of the river. But as far as driving vehicle transportation, nothing was there. So folks had a lot of opportunity to participate both in the previous process and through ours. So it's hard to make a recommendation when nobody said this is an issue. So that might help you think through that piece of it.
It sounds like you're saying we didn't get a lot of input from that part of town.
I'm
So
only
is that-
speaking to transportation in terms of the comments that we got. I don't know how to answer the question about geographic, where all of our comments came through.
If I'm alone in this concern, then we should move on and not let this be a speed bump. It just seemed to me that was a fairly big thing that we're we're gonna have to deal with. And I thought I had heard you say you were gonna be summarizing kind of where we stood, some of our discussion, and also considering the legal consequences.
Was speed bump a transportation pun?
Could be, if you like that.
I guess I'm not clear on how a conversation about de-annexation or not de-annexation affects transportation with the comp plan. And in addition to what Christie was saying, I try to remember, and I had to tell ourselves this too, and our staff, like this is a community plan, so this is a plan based on community feedback. So as Christie has said, we didn't get that feedback to address that. There are a number of transportation goals that would apply to the west of the river as much as it applies to the east of the river. And so that would look at things like the bike and ped connectivity opportunities and what makes sense for that side as well as this side.
And Kim, let me also bring up something that Nate mentioned, that this is a document, but also a process.
Sure.
And the process is visioning for where we see development headed throughout the town. So whether the annexation ever happens, if they're, in the meantime, if somebody has a more input and more vision about what they see that area developing into, none of this is set in stone and is the end of anything. So if, there is the continuing opportunity for that community or have their voices.
And I understand
Let me-
the
let me-
document itself is a living.
Let me see if this
thing.
clarifies.
Well, let me ask my question a different way.
Please.
If you think about town with or without the de-annexation area, proposed de-annexation area, does it change anything you think about the comprehensive plan? If the answer is no, then let's move on.
Not for me.
Not for
Okay.
me either, yeah.
Question withdrawn. Thank you.
Let's get all concerns on the table. This is the night to do it. Are there any others? Has everybody?
She put the health thing in there, I thought, I'm happy as a clam. That was me.
My real question, have all council members had a chance to thoroughly read and study it, and are you prepared to vote on it? The answer to that would have to be yes, to move on.
I am, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. We're now going to have a public hearing. And have a public hearing regarding ordinance 2024-03, adopting the Woodfin Comprehensive Plan. We'll open this public hearing at 6:42 PM. Did anyone sign up, Madam Clerk, for the public hearing?
Double check, make sure.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment, any concerns, questions on the comprehensive plan? I know most people in the room have been a part of this for a long time. With that, we'll close the public hearing at 6:43 PM. And the mayor will entertain motions on the approval of the ordinance, the Woodfin Together Comprehensive Plan.
I'll make the motion. I move to approve the proposed comprehensive plan known as Woodfin Together and find that it is reasonable in the public interest, is consistent with town-adopted goals and plans, and meets development and other needs of the community in that the request, 1, meets the statutory requirement for a municipal comprehensive plan, 2, ensures that the town's planning, zoning, and permitting processes facilitate sustained and positive development and supports the needs of residents, business, and industry. And 3, promotes council's strategic goals, including excellent town services, affordable living, equity and inclusion, investment in transportation and infrastructure, and fostering sense of place through the quality government facilities.
Is there a second to that very, very long motion?
Sorry.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Second, very long.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion, concerns, questions? Yes, Councilman.
I'd like to hear a bit about, I didn't realize the comprehensive plan is a statutory requirement. What is, I assume it's a state, North Carolina, what is in the statute? I'm just curious.
So we have a relatively new, it's about 4 years old, statement of all of zoning law. They consolidated what had been zoning law for counties and cities and different authorities into one chapter, that's 160D. And it, for the first time, stated explicitly in statute the requirement for a comprehensive land use plan. There had been.
You said comprehensive plan slash what?
Land use.
Land use.
Yes. There had been case law in the past that essentially hinted at the need for it, that said you needed to make your zoning decisions in the future based on some idea of where you're going. That the upshot of it is that you don't make zoning decisions just like throwing darts at a board. There needs to be some kind of sense of why do you decide? It shouldn't be a random, sort of a arbitrary and capricious sort of thing that you maybe just only see this near little, what does this one postage stamp of property mean to the whole plan? So for the first time, there was an explicit, with the adoption of Chapter 160, requirement to have a de facto plan that says this is our plan for the future. The town has had a version of a comp plan, so that it shouldn't be taken as the first time or that we're way behind or just catching up on it, but it had not been optimal and it needed a fresh look and a new vision, which I think this does.
And John, correct me if I'm wrong,
Yes.
approval of the comprehensive plan will lead to town staff doing a thorough review of all of our zoning and ordinances moving forward, correct?
Well, that's a recommendation that comes out of the comp plan,
Right.
is that we look at updating our zoning code.
Because as we move forward, if we get a plan for a development, a piece of real estate, if it doesn't fit with the comprehensive plan, it shouldn't be approved.
So,
Or if you do approve it, you know you're changing the comprehensive.
That is correct,
And
yes.
that is part of that sort of
Exactly.
maybe document idea that we mean to change where we think this development is going to.
So a couple follow-ups.
The big caveat on that, though, is that only applies to legislative decisions, so the conditional zonings, the largest land use approvals, there are some that are made with no reference to the comprehensive plan at all.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So the statute simply requires one, it doesn't say process, it doesn't say how often, it doesn't say, I'm really curious, I just want to know, that's pretty much the relevant part of the comp plan, what the statute says, you must have a comprehensive plan.
When you say process, you mean as to what's in the plan or what it looks like?
No, how it's put together, whether it's done every 5 years, every 10 years, it just says you must have.
It doesn't specify how often you have to update
Right.
the plan or anything like that. What's typical is about every 10 to 15
Right.
years.
I just want to make sure I understand what the statute is. Okay.
And trust me, I helped bring our old comprehensive plan into compliance 2.5 years ago. It was woefully inadequate, and this is a beautiful thing compared to that. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it does. I think I understand.
Other questions?
Can I just make a comment?
Yes, sir.
I've been through 2 of these in the past 2 years, one at the county level and one this, and Nathan Christie, I applaud your work. You did a great job.
We have a motion and a second. If there are no other comments, questions, I don't see any heads nodding. Please, if you vote aye, please raise your hand.
Aye.
It appears to be unanimous. We have a comprehensive plan called Woodfin Together that's been adopted. Thank you very much. It's a big night for Woodfin. Yes. Now you can run. Next item on new business, we have 2 other items. This one is regarding a discussion of some real property owned on Appalachian Village Road, identified in the Buncombe County Tax Record as PIN number 9731-54-0323. Madam Town Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try to keep this pretty brief. The town became aware or I think the town has always been aware, but our Parks and Greenways Advisory Committee, a while back, looked into all of town-owned property and explored potential uses. During that process, we discovered that the town did own this small parcel. It's just a little under 1.5 acres, located on the north end of the town off of Old Marshall Highway. It's in a predominantly residential area. It's a very unusual context, as you can see from this aerial image. It's one of 4 parcels located within a larger 100-acre tract. I believe the history of this parcel, the 100-acre tract, is that it was kind of a cabin, RV park, camping kind of community. If there was some of that, I think some of that's been removed. You can kind of see that the remnants of some old RV parking sites that I think have, basically just sort of gone away over time. And it appears to be transitioning, those cabins being converted into homes, some new homes being constructed. It's unknown what the future intent of that 100-acre parcel is, but, tucked inside that is that 1.5 acre that was gifted to the town back in 2008. And so kind of looking at what is the potential use for the property, we cannot really identify any discernible public use for the property. So the question was raised as to whether or not we want to consider selling it or disposing of this parcel. One thing that we did notice in the analysis is that this parcel was zoned transitional district, which is meant to be kind of on the continuum of development. You started with lower density residential, move to higher density residential, move to light non-residential uses to more intense commercial uses. Transitional is meant to kind of transition an area from residential to non-residential. It's unusual to see a single parcel surrounded by a larger tract that's of a different or a dissimilar zoning. And our state statutes actually describe this as spot zoning. This is something that's not permitted in the state of North Carolina. It's arguable whether or not this or other contexts always justify spot zoning, and we could debate that. But it is unusual, and it kind of makes you look at it and wonder. Should the town choose to move forward, should the council choose to move forward with disposing of this property or selling this property, staff is recommending that we rezone that parcel from transitional to R21 to be consistent with the surrounding area and to potentially resolve any spot zoning concerns. So as I mentioned earlier, staff has not really identified any discernible public use for the property. Selling the property would support some town-adopted goals for infill housing and would return that property to a taxable state. I mentioned earlier about the spot zoning. The state of North Carolina also provides guidance on how municipalities would dispose of real property. There's basically 3 processes that are identified: a sealed bid, an upset bid, and a public auction. The upset bid process is the most commonly used method. It's a pretty straightforward, easy to administer method. Our staff feel comfortable with that, with the assistance from John. We feel that we can manage that without requiring any special services from other professionals. So we do recommend moving forward with selling the surplus property through the upset bid process. We also recommend rezoning the property before we.
Would you explain the upset bid process? That's next.
Sorry. So the upset bid process is we would advertise the property for sale and identify a period of time when, we would expect to receive any offers. Once we receive an offer, so I'm trying to remember the process. So we receive the offer, and then we advertise or we adopt a resolution saying that we've received an offer and give anybody the opportunity to submit another bid that would upset that bid, that would be higher, yeah.
So another bid
Yeah.
it would be the upset.
Yes.
The advertisement we do for these says that you propose to accept that as the bid because you are going to keep control over what the final sale price is. So nobody can come in and lay $1 down and buy the property for nothing. There is a statutory formula that I've always got a huge kick out of for how much an upset bid has to be, which is 10% of the first $1,000, which throughout all space and time is $100, and always has been, plus 5% of the remainder above the initial offer. And then if you get that bid, it starts it again, you re-advertise, you wait another 10-day period for more bids to come in. And the next one in has to meet that same upset.
And you'll keep doing that until you receive no more offers. And then that's the final bid. Now, the town at any point, even if you go through 6 rounds of upset bids, and at the end, if you get an offer that you don't like, we don't have to move forward. There's no obligation for us to move forward with selling the property. But that is the process.
Have you been able to apply any estimates to what we might open with?
We haven't gotten that far yet. If the town chooses to, if council wishes to move forward, we would start to look into this a little bit more, get a little bit more information. We would come back next month with a resolution, just stating the council's intent to move forward with the upset bid process. And then we would, in the meantime, initiate the process for the rezoning. And I think we would wait until the rezoning was complete, and then we would go ahead and move forward with the next steps.
Got our first offer.
But as you decide what you're going to do with the property, I think part of the information is that it was donated to the town in memory of a Marine, I believe it was, that I think died in Vietnam. So, and I don't think that there was a relationship between a family relationship between the person and the grant. So, as you decide, there was an intent by the person that made the donation that this person be remembered somehow.
The parcel does not look like it's terribly accessible. I mean, it looks like there's a road there, but, so,
Yeah, it's a little, let me see if I can go back.
without further development.
It's a little bit tricky. You can reach the entrance, Appalachian Village Road is that kind of windy road on the left-hand side of the screen. And then it goes off the screen and kind of comes back in. You can kind of see that little bit of tail where it comes back in. And then it kind of turns to just sort of a private driveway. And that, would reach that parcel. I went back and looked at past deeds to try to see if there was any reference. Oftentimes, residential properties will refer to, a private road easement of 15 feet wide or, something along those lines. I couldn't find any reference to that. It doesn't mean there isn't something in the record somewhere. I couldn't find that. This property also does not have access to sewer and water. So what we might expect in terms of a sale is hard for me to know. I think we probably need to do a little bit more research.
So it's not going to be the PFC.
It's not going to close the gap on the.
Well, no, I was thinking for your Jim's thing about community gardens. I don't think it's a likely spot.
No, and as Shannon has said, the Parks Advisory Board had been through that, and it's just really tough to figure out a use for the town.
This is actually a quite steep piece of property as well. It's 30.
It's beautiful.
38% average natural slope, so that's pretty
Someday
steep.
it'll be a gorgeous neighborhood, I think.
The road that goes up there, is that private or public?
It is public you can see, here, let me see, I think I have a.
You don't have to get too specific, because I have
She may
another
have a point.
direction
She
where
may
I
have a
want to
point.
go with my question.
Go there, please.
So, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, Appalachian Village it's quite wide right-of-way. It's a 60-foot wide right-of-way. You can see the little eyebrow, or the little half circle, and then that road that comes off is Appalachian Village, and then it kind of turns into that private road after that.
So, I'm wanting to respect, because you brought this up for a reason, at least I believe you brought up the purpose of the giving.
No, I didn't have a reason other than
To make sure.
I found that piece of property in a search several years
Okay,
ago, and that was what came up.
And I bring my own baggage. My father was in Vietnam, so the fact that you said that touched a nerve on me. And I'm wondering, this person that donated this land, I know they didn't think the land was going to be in perpetuity to the town, and it would just sit there holding the image or this person's spirit in mind, but would it be possible to change the name of the street to honor that person?
Others, the name, it's already named, that's emergency 911. It would be very difficult to do that. And other property owners, that would mean their address changes.
Is it
That
really
is
that
a
many?
very challenging thing to do.
Is there really that many? I mean, okay, I just, that was something that came to mind to honor the purpose of that land.
Yeah, my experience with changing road names is that people who have those addresses will fight tooth and nail to not change their address.
I could see that if there were a lot, but I'm not seeing a lot of homes there, so that's
Well,
just the reason.
Even one
Okay.
is
Would
going to
you-
stop the process.
If it's going to be much, would you come to the podium so we can get you on camera? That's all I ask.
It's not going to be much, but for those that don't know me, I was on the Green Waste Advisory Committee, and that was how that was found. And my thought at the time was that it should be sold. And there's all sorts of things in the park that are being developed or are there, that, you know, a name could be attached to it.
Easy.
So
Exactly.
that, you know, the donor's wish could be honored, and,
Yes.
you know, that money could be applied towards it.
Okay, so something like
What-
that,
Whatever it
just,
is. I mean,
Right.
there's plenty of
Like
opportunities.
that.
And the only reason I mentioned it was because it was gifted with, you know, that specific person. And there's a picture, in the file someplace, there's a picture of that young fellow.
okay.
And I'll just mention briefly, you mentioned that you didn't think it was given with the intent that it would forever and ever be that. And there isn't any attempt in the language of it to tie it up in that kind of way. Because there are, you can restrict properties, you can give it away or sell it for that matter. You can place, you know, reversionary clauses that say if it's ever not owned by the town, then it goes to somebody else.
Yeah, I get
And
that.
there is none of that.
The fact that they put that blurb in there, that this was to remember, that is why I brought it up.
And it really, truly is just the, you know, an expression of intention. And I like the idea of
Go
finding
back.
another way to carry it out.
Okay.
It doesn't harm the property.
So the staff recommendation fully is to rezone it and move forward with selling it?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Mayor Vihan, welcome.
Oh, Jerry, do you mind speaking at the microphone? We need to try to encourage people to.
Yeah, and your fans want to see you, so.
In regard to that piece of property up there, and I was aware that after the fact that it was given to the town, you know, wasn't any big to do about it when we got it. But if you look right now, before maybe you proceed too far with selling this property, if you're interested, it might be a possibility of leasing that to one of these cell companies for a cell tower. Because they're looking at different spots all over the county, and they pay very well when they lease a piece of property. Just food for thought.
Food for thought, thank you.
By the way, there is.
Yeah. That's
Oh,
great.
wow. What zoning would allow a cell tower, just out of curiosity? I think it may be on the wrong side of the hill, but
I'd have to check our ordinance. I don't know off the top of my head. I would, and, you know, I think that could potentially be
Exactly.
problematic because
With
I
our
do not think
comprehensive
transitional
plan.
district would support it. So we would have to zone it something like CS or industrial, which means we have a spot zoning
okay, all right.
position, so.
Are there other concerns or questions about it, given the staff's recommendation? It's a beautiful thing, and there's absolutely no reason that this town can't do something to honor this soldier.
Yeah,
down
he did
the
not
road.
come back, he was missing in action, so he never came back.
I understand.
Okay.
Is there a appetite for a motion?
Sure. I'll do it.
Please do.
First. I move to instruct staff to first initiate a rezoning of the property located at 99999 Appalachian Village Road, identified in the Buncombe County Tax Record as PIN 9731540323 from transitional district to residential 21. And secondly, to move forward with the disposal of the same real property by using the upset bid process.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second?
Any further discussion, questions, concerns before we finalize it? Instructions to staff. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And it does pass. Ken, would you send that page or a link or something to it with about the
Yeah,
Marine?
I gotta look
I'd
at
like
it.
to learn about the man myself.
There's not much there that I can see.
Well, I understand
but I'll-
anything.
Okay.
I'd like to look it up. We have a third item that was added to new business, and it's a discussion about how and if the council wants to respond to the de-annexation movement, and what direction the council would give to staff in that regard. Is that fair?
Yeah, and I've
Okay.
asked to add that on because this is kind of just like the last item, something that falls squarely within the ambit of things that council considers, not staff. So only council can decide to sell a property, only council can decide whether to take a position on a de-annexation request. So I think that if we're going to go forward with any sort of further communication with the community, that needs to be a direction from the full council. And I'm adding this to the agenda because I'm aware there was a conversation of sending out some sort of written communication. I'd like to hear what the thought was on why that would be needed. It strikes me as an unnecessary step and probably unwarranted. So that would be my thought, but I'm happy to hear from anyone else on that.
Would one of the council members who was present, it was a brainstorming session, but it was with the thought that, at least verbally, there was four members of the council that probably would want to do some kind of communication. So Johanna or Betsy, would you, let's be transparent about what the conversation was.
Right, the conversation was to do our due diligence and to, after having the community meeting, the limited number of people there, the concern that perhaps not everyone did receive the letter, that if we made one mailing to the residents in that section, not just those who signed or did not sign the petition, but to just put in place a bit of information about what this does, what occurs, basically, and just give them an opportunity to then turn around and have questions answered that they might still have. And I did not, you all took notes, I did not, but just as a chance to make one last effort to show some of the things that we are trying to do already. We're looking at zoning. We want you to understand what this really means, because we don't feel completely as if all of the folks in that area understand what this might mean to them. So a single-page, short, sweet, informational, with a couple of questions and answers available, not asking for any response, but just to show that, yes, in fact, we have done what we feel like we need to do to get all of the information out. So, and you can add to that, Johanna, as to...
So, and I think the overarching point was to make sure that we are able to not capture, but they capture the real intent. Perhaps some of those people who received the mailing didn't quite understand, and since they weren't part of the petition, they may not be aware of the ramifications of a de-annexation. So it's just to make them aware that that action is being discussed. And it's more of a, like, it's another transparency thing. It's to make sure that everyone, we are making a final attempt to make everyone aware that that is being discussed. And that's the concern. It's more of a, that everyone is aware. We understand that the effort that was made by Ms. Parton was broad, but we want to make sure that everyone was told what it is that they are trying to do. That was the point.
And the consequences.
The consequences are secondary. The consequences are secondary. It's mostly...
Because that's not our decision. The consequences are...
It's mostly to make sure that everyone is aware of what it really means. Like, that they're in that window. They could see, maybe they got the letter, but they didn't understand that it meant them as well.
So here's the reason why, hearing that and appreciating fully what you're saying, I still don't think we should do it. And the reason is that this is not a referendum-based system. These people are not going to be asked. We're influencing what they think about the process does not have any impact on the process. This is going to ultimately be a vote for us on whether we would like to endorse the request. I think that if there was a thought that we had missed some information that would inform our decision, that might be a justification for doing it. But to get into any sort of argument on the policy merits, I don't think is an appropriate use of town resources and frankly not a good look for the town. I think that trying to influence people's opinion at this point is ill-advised. I think that we have the ability to, if we think we have all the information, take a stance and publish that stance and then stand by that stance. But to have this as a start of hey, we think you need to understand why you're wrong, I think is probably not productive and feels borderline condescending to me.
I don't think that that's the point of it. The point was, and the way what was structured, the notes that she took and that Jim took were not to say, hey, you're wrong. It was more of this potentially could happen. Because our concern is not everyone is aware. It's not an argument and it's not even a discussion. It's more of an informational piece.
And here's the impact that could happen.
Which then gets back to for what purpose? So what
Full
is the
disclosure.
reason for it?
Full disclosure.
Councilman Cohen?
I was not part of that discussion. I followed, I read your draft letter. My comment is simply, I don't know what most people think about this. Hear me out for a second. That is, I've heard that petition had 200 signatures. I don't know the relation of those signatures to roughly 285 parcels. I don't know people who attended that public meeting. I've read accounts, but I know that it may be that staff ran some numbers, and not all of the attendees were parcel holders. There were families, there were multiples for one parcel. So my issue is very simply, as I think about it, is I don't know what most people in that affected area think about this. And, for me, policy decisions may often have that as a data point. What do most people think of it? Doesn't mean you're beholden to follow what most people think most of the time. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. So for me, the point of additional communication would be either inviting people to respond in a website, in a SurveyMonkey, or to respond with a stamped postcard to find out. And I think that communicating with people about it in terms of here's what's involved, here are some of the pros and cons, doesn't necessarily mean that it would be condescending, but would invite people to respond. And it could be, by the way, that 10% of parcel owners will respond. I mean, I really don't know. I understand that as a possibility. But for me, it's an attempt to, as I think about this, what do most people think? And I don't know that another community meeting would be effective, given how you didn't reach most parcel holders. And I'll stop there.
And that's why, so just to Phil, I think that's why I opened with saying that if the purpose was for soliciting additional information, I could understand that as a reason. And if that's the goal, I think that would be something I could get behind. But making an argument about what we think is the best way to go in a formal town mailer just strikes me as kind of fruitless and probably a waste of resources. But if there's actually a purpose, which is, we haven't heard from you yet, let us hear from you, that would seem productive to me.
And I think that's the direction the discussion went. Councilman?
You may be an outlier on this. I usually think of the search for additional information. What will you do differently with that information? And sometimes the cost, emotional or financial, is simply not worth it because you're not going to do it. We have already decided as a body where we stand. I think the best public-facing avenue is to publish our decision. I don't think we're going to change our minds based on additional input. Publish our decision and why. I think the best possible look for us is to say, we heard you, we listened, we don't agree with you, but we did listen, which is maybe more than they thought they were going to get.
fully agree with that.
And let's note it for the record that this council has not made a recommendation or reached a,
No, but
we only had open discussions about it.
Informally in discussion, it seemed like that's where we were
And in
headed.
the minutes that we approved tonight, we have the notes from the retreat indicating that we would take this up for a formal vote in April. And so that is now in the public record. And I think that that's the time, to my mind, that's the time and place to publish the stated reasons why, rather than trying to have any sort of further back and forth.
So from a former communications perspective,
Yes.
call perspective, anything that helps us appear to be who we are, which I think is thoughtful and engaged and open to hearing, is good. So if the postcard idea helps that, then I think that maybe that's worth considering. If we're not going to get to the label.
That's the only goal that I would think would justify it, is hey, we may not have heard from you yet. Here's how you can give us your input.
And the
Also,
call,
I mean, it's legitimately, maybe we will hear something new, but if not, we can at least say,
Oh, no.
we made a very
wait,
good
and
faith
according
effort.
to my notes, the recommendation was going to be that there would be a call to action, an email address, and a telephone number for residents to call, not to vote, but to ask questions, verify, maybe to ask their property tax bill, those sorts of things.
Well, I mean, that's always, that doesn't change the status quo. Any citizen could always do that. I don't think we need to encourage occupying more staff time, but to get back to what Ken said, if this is just a directive of, because I fully agree, I don't assume I know everything, but I also don't think that we need to have a conversation that we don't think is well suited or well calculated to be productive, but having an open invitation to, we may not have heard from you, please tell us your thoughts. That's a way to make sure that we don't miss anybody, but I really don't want to put in any
Without
sort of
doing a
arguments.
referendum.
Well, so we don't control whether there would be a referendum.
No, but in the communication you
Yeah,
just described.
right, and in quick searching, the General Assembly almost never has that as a component of de-annexation considerations. De-annexation considerations come up about 6 per term. We've seen 3 in the past decade get through, none of which had a referendum component. So if that, extremely rare occurrence came to be and there was going to be a referendum, then maybe it's time to make an argument, but this is a position of, let's make sure we have all the information and then state our justification. It's not, here's why we think we want to convince you of this. It is, we've heard you and now here's our decision.
Acknowledging that I don't have a vote, my concern in participating in the conversation was that out of the almost 600 annexed people, we have no idea how many of them know that this is going on. Might have heard a rumor about it.
Sure.
Might not know Chip, that we simply state the facts, give them some mathematical examples, maybe
That's where I get back to, for what purpose? Soliciting information makes sense to me. Making an argument ahead of telling what our decision is of no
and making sure that
rational basis.
making sure that everyone knows about an issue that could affect their life is not a reason to.
Well, presumably,
Make an action.
the invitation to give your feedback on the issue would say, this is an issue. But going beyond that, why would we make an argument on something that is not going to a referendum? It will be the subject of our decision.
I agree. And it's fairly clear in most cases, the people who are unhappy will be the most vocal in any situation, in the old 9-to-5 rule. So we have not, I think your idea in soliciting additional information actually does make a ton of sense, because at least we can say we are really trying to listen to everybody.
Genuinely, I don't want to have missed a piece of information, but what I do not think makes any sense at all is to present an argument for why we think we're right.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So I think I'm hearing that there's broad support for a communication of some kind. That at a minimum, that communication could explain sort of the purpose of the communication. The town has become aware that there's this movement amongst certain residents west of the river to gain support for de-annexation, et cetera. We have not heard from everybody. We've heard from some people. We would like to hear from you if you wish to contact us, include that information. So, and just leave it at that, perhaps, and not include any additional information about here's some facts, here's what percentage of your tax bill goes to the town, So don't get into any of that, but just a broad invitation to share their thoughts and opinions about this movement.
Absolutely.
Don't you think responses to that will be all of those questions?
I think we're going to get about 5, honestly. I think the people who are going to be in tune with this issue are already in tune with this issue.
Out of almost 600, you think we'll get 5?
I think that's how many people view this as a very important thing in their life.
Well, the question is how many people actually know it? I think that was the point of the communication to begin with, is to make sure that everyone is aware of it. So you're saying of the 600, 200 are supposedly hyper-aware? So the other people that were spoken to who didn't sign, there was no way to capture that information. So we don't know if Mr. Parton hit those other 400, whatever estimate. We don't know if he hit those and if those people were against it. So that was that's the point,
Yeah,
is
that's
to
a great-
capture that.
I think it's just the content,
Yeah.
what else gets shared.
And so I think the point of then giving them a mailer, directing them with where to give their feedback so that they're not just screaming into the void.
Yes, that was the point.
Sure,
That was
and
the
so
point.
then we're not making any argument about what is right, we're just giving them an opportunity to
Isn't
have
that a
their voice
referendum?
heard.
it becomes a referendum, you're asking them to
No,
say whether they're for it or
this
against
is
it.
happening, and then you can give us any other policy considerations that you think we may have missed.
Mr.
I'm
Cohen,
sorry.
and then Ms. Urban.
I think Ken and Eric had persuaded me, hear me out. That is, I get the difference between making an argument and listening. I get the difference between making an argument and asking someone what they think. Presumably at that community meeting, it was a listening session rather than a presentation of an argument to convince people to say yay or nay. And where I think I do want to know more about what do most people think, and it may not, that may be quixotic, that is, it may not occur. I'm not so sure that I think we should try and make an argument in that communication. So I think I am refining what I'm thinking and coming up.
In April, when the council takes this up, after we have an opportunity to perhaps send this mailer, get feedback from anybody else, and depending on what kind of feedback we get, weighs into the council's decision, that we would have a draft resolution in April that would spell out the argument.
And that
For or
argument may be
against, whatever
informed
that is.
by a better knowledge
Yes.
of what most people think. It's unlikely, but it's possible, and
It would leave us, that having it in the published agenda also gives one final, because this would be another item on our agenda, it would give another final instance in addition to all the others that we've now engaged in, to hear any additional feedback that we may have missed, so.
Council,
Would your question on your card ask, are you aware of this? Do you have, I mean, because my guess is kind of what Johanna was saying, there are an awful lot of people out there that weren't reached, that have no idea this is going on, or no idea what it may or may not do to
Can I
them.
suggest, though, that that's data for your decision about the position you're gonna take on it, which may be, out of all these parcels, we heard from this many people.
Right.
And I think it would just be the amount of context that Shannon described before, which is, hey, this is going on. We don't think we've heard from everybody about this. If you have thoughts on this,
tell us what you think is the phrase you used.
here's the link to
And
tell us
That
what
is
you
a good
think.
phrase.
and if a lot of the calls are I'm for it or against it, you're okay with that?
Right. Unless there is a policy argument that we haven't heard, it's of no consequence.
But you're okay with that we'll have to record that, I mean, we'll have to take notes.
I don't understand the question. What would be the downside?
Well, I didn't ask you what would be the downside. Are you prepared that might be the most common response, would be somebody,
I think what Eric's describing is not a poll of do you support it or not.
Absolutely not.
It's this is happening, do you know, if you have information that you would like to share with the town about this.
To inform that decision.
To help inform, the town has not yet made a decision to support or not. If you would like to share any information or context, please contact us.
AKA,
It's
tell me what you
opportunities,
think.
presented
And
opportunities.
it's-
How are you going to receive the information, just
That's the
phone
question.
Yeah,
calls?
email
or-
and a phone number both,
Okay.
and we would just have to check it every day.
And if somebody responds, I'm absolutely for it, do we capture that data?
I don't think this is a capturing data issue. I think that if there's an issue identified that it presents a policy argument that would be relevant to our consideration, that needs to reach us.
I think if somebody replied saying, I support this wholeheartedly, you know,
Yeah.
then there's no new information that that individual has supplied. So that doesn't really help in the council.
I hear you, and I'm following you. What if somebody replied, this is the first time hearing about it, this is crazy. What are you guys doing over there? Would that be something we would want to capture?
I think that anything, so let's be clear, anything that comes to us is going to be a public record. So I'm absolutely certain I'm not understanding what you mean by capturing it, but it will be a public record and it will exist.
That's exactly what I mean.
That won't, okay, then the answer to your question is yes, it will be captured.
Right, but we're not tallying votes out of this or anything.
Yeah, and I don't think you mean this, but there is not a legal mechanism to turn this into a referendum.
Oh, I understand that totally. I understand that totally.
Or really.
I understand that totally.
Yeah.
Other questions, concerns? Don't know if I'm hearing a consensus on what direction to give town staff. Maybe I am.
I can try to capture it in a motion. So my motion would be that we direct town staff to, for the one means of additional follow-up with the west of the river community that will be going out in writing, that we limit it to a notification that there has been a request for de-annexation and present them with an opportunity to share any feedback or thoughts or policy arguments that they may have that they think that the town should consider as we work through that petition, and then give them a means by which to communicate those thoughts.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I second.
Concerns about that? Any, do you want to discuss it? Is it ready for a vote? Vice Mayor, council members? All in favor, please raise a hand.
Aye.
And it passes unanimously. That is the end of new business.